Boris Johnson, the man who can get away with saying seemingly anything just by offering people a cup of tea, has suggested something devastating to Theresa May. But first off, I just want to note the hypocrisy. Now, while I don't hold the journalists to account who are actually there at Johnson's home because they were doing the right thing, they kept pushing him for answers. If Corbyn had said something like that, in fact, we already know if Corbyn had even suggested or even just been accused of saying something like that, BBC, ITV, Sky News, they would have all crucified him if his response was just to come out with a cup of tea. But BBC and all the others just laugh it off if they cover it at all as if, that Boris, but he brought tea out, isn't that great of the white supremacist piece of scum. Anyway, the point of this one, he has suggested to Theresa May that we should ignore the rest of the world and we should side completely with the United States and what they might do with Iran. Now, if you're following American politics, if you're following what Donald Trump is doing specifically with Iran, who he has in his cabinet, they are all warmongers. Absolutely everyone. John Bolton, there has never been a war that man hasn't had a hard-on for. He loved going into Iraq for BS reasons and murdering people. He is the first person to demand that the US goes to war with anyone for any reason, but he will never, ever sign up or allow any of his family to sign up. He just loves the fact that, people are going to be murdered. So Trump has a cabinet pushing forward with war with someone. There have been plans leaked by his own people saying that, he made contingency plans within the first few weeks of invading Venezuela, of having conflicts with more countries in the Middle East. Pulling out of the Iranian deal was potentially devastating. Now, so far it's been okay because the rest of the world has said, no, we're going to stick with this because it's a great deal. The deal essentially was, hey, Iran, we've got your money. We're not going to give it back to you until you stop nuclear experiments. And that's nuclear weapons as well as nuclear energy, which is a lot of countries do nuclear energy without having to do nuclear weapons. It's a different setup. But essentially it was, hey, no, you're not going to do any of that. And we're not going to give you any penny. We're not going to give you a penny of your own money until you agree to that. So they agreed. It wasn't a great deal for them, but it was a great deal for the rest of the world. Trump doesn't understand that. Trump doesn't care about that because Trump is a scumbag who, quite frankly, doesn't care who you are unless you're rich and white. So it's likely that Trump will push for a war with Iran. And Boris Johnson, being the effervescent muppet that he is all for this. Now, he's siding with Trump because they are both white supremacists. They are both racists. Unfortunately, you just look at their history and it is blatantly obvious. Boris Johnson is not as stupid as Trump. He's a little more savvy. I don't think he is as smart as people give him credit for, but he certainly is a snake. There is more intelligence there than he likes to give out. But when it comes to Iran, it would be devastating if we got into any kind of conflict with them. The war with Iraq was devastating for Iraq, and it had a massive repercussion for British soldiers, for the injuries that they sustained, whether they were physical or whether it was PTSD. There was a massive fallout that hit our soldiers, that hit our boys, our girls, our sons, our daughters, our brothers, our sisters. Everyone was affected by it. Iraq in 2016 had a population registered as 37.2 million. Small country with a small army. Iran is not that. Iran in 2016 was registered to have 80.28 million people. They have a full-fledged army. They have a full-fledged weapon system. It's not nuclear, but it is incredibly effective for what they need. It would be a full-scale war, not just a conflict further down the road that you can turn the TV off and ignore it. Just a bit of comparison. Iran has over 80 million people. The UK in 2016 had 65.64 million people registered. Now, doesn't include children, but still, Iran is a much bigger country than the UK. That's not just England, that is the entire UK. Over 65 million, less than 66 million. Iran has over 80 million people there. It would be devastating. Even with the United States forces, it would be absolutely devastating. And that is completely ignoring the fact that we would have to go against the rest of the world. Now, as I've said before, we are already, when it comes to conflicts, as I said in the Syria video where Theresa May decided she was going to bomb Syria for no real reason, we are already on bad terms when it comes to that because of the Iraq war. Because the rest of the world said, no, look, the reason for going in doesn't exist. You cannot do this. There were no WMDs. We went in, we found no WMDs. So we had to make up a new reason, but by that point it was already late. Could have made the case for chemical weapons, but that's not what Blair did. Blair sided with Dick Cheney and George W. Bush and went in essentially for oil. Because of that, we are in very, very difficult standings when it comes to conflict with the rest of the world. Now, we're already seeing the backlash of Brexit. This nonsensical slogan of Brexit means Brexit. Well, I'm sorry, if we cut out the EU completely, this country will fail. It will crumble. The amount of EU migrants we have working in factories, working in healthcare, working in social care, working on farms is unbelievable, because it's jobs that English people either don't want or don't want to work as hard at. So it will crumble. If we're then going to get condemned even widely because we've now pissed off the rest of the world by going into a conflict no one needs to be in, that Trump started, then the only ally we have is a man who has attacked every single ally he has, apart from Russia. A man who has bankrupted himself 6 times. A man who has reneged on every single agreement he has ever made. A man who has attacked endlessly people who support him and prop him up. That would be our only ally. And it's okay to say, okay, well, he'd do right by us. But has he done right by us so far by attacking Theresa May? I have no love for the woman, but he was slagging her off unbelievably. And then he goes and meets her. He's attacked the Mayor of London, not because he doesn't agree with what the Mayor of London does, but because Sajid Khan is Muslim. That was the only reason he attacked Sajid Khan. He has attacked the NHS by forcing private pharmaceutical companies to raise their prices on drugs that they sell to the NHS. That is a direct attack. It's also an illegal action for the President of the United States, but let's face it, at this point, Republicans are so weak and pathetic that they won't do a damn thing against Donald Trump. At least not until the smaller case gets wrapped up. But even then, we're left with Mike Pence. Mike Pence holds the same values as Donald Trump. It's just he's not as stupid. But this is the same man who flew miles on a private jet using public money to go to a national football game just to walk out during a protest. America right now, with its current government, cannot be trusted. And quite frankly, if Theresa May takes that white supremacist garbage advice and disrespects the rest of the world, mugs off the rest of the world just to side with America, that will be the final coffin. That will be the final nail in the UK's coffin. We are leaving the European Union with a bunch of buffoons who couldn't organise a piss up in a brewery. That's already going to be devastating. This action will isolate us from the rest of the world completely, and the only ally will be a man who has attacked every single ally he has ever had.